Hey man, you don't mind if I play through, do you?
Sure can. Welcome to Playing Through. Hey, MFers, here we are back. Another great podcast, something new and exciting. I've never tried this before. So we have 4 awesome people who are going to talk to us today about golf swing, golf instruction, maybe a little bit of equipment. So let's go ahead and do some intros. First, Kyle Middleton. He is the owner of Great Lakes Golf in Bay City, former college golf coach and longtime instructor. He's making his first time appearance with us here on Move Faster.
Welcome,
so
Kyle,
welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And we have a return guest, Mr. Austin Deiters, owner and manager of Middleton Golf HQ, master club fitter and golf instructor. And like I said, Austin's been with us before and hope to do some more with him in the future.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And Doug Temple, another returnee, amazingly enough, that Keith didn't scare him off.
Right.
So longtime golf instructor, experience under master teacher Jack Lumpkin, heads a bunch of great golf programs we've talked about with Doug before. PGA Junior League, First Tee programs, Military Golf Association, working with vets. And again, thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
For your time again. And then we have Keith.
Then me.
So obviously Keith's my partner here, a golf instructor at Curry, working in Kyle's place a little bit too, works over at HQ some. So great group to work with here today. So welcome, Ball. Yeah, welcome.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to call this Swing Thoughts today.
Swing Thoughts.
I'm going to call it
golf
Swing
instruction.
Thoughts. I'm going to be soaking in a lot of instruction today. I need it. Great group here today. Looking forward to this. So let's get right into it, guys. Our first question: what is the biggest ask request from a student working on his or her golf game and/or swing?
Well, I think a lot of times with the students I have, it's different, but I always ask them like a little interview up front. What are they looking to get out of their swing? I think for most of the students I have, they really just want to understand some cause and effect. Like, why am I topping it? What makes the ball go in the air? But I spend at least 10, 15 minutes talking with our students on what is it that you're really looking forward to or looking to learn, because everybody's different. Some people are there, they want to lower their handicap, while other people are like, I just want to have fun. So it's just having some conversation with them. But yeah, for me, I think it's cause and effect. Why is this happening? What do I do to fix it? Can you give me some drills and things like that?
Yeah. Austin, what about you?
I don't know. I feel like you hear a lot of like buzzwords when a student comes in, right? And the most common one I hear is they want to be more consistent. And it's like, what does that really mean, right? I mean, to me, consistent is if you're doing the same thing, repeatedly, right? It doesn't mean hitting it straight every time.
Mm-hmm.
That's generally kind of what they're getting after when it comes to that. And then most people, they want to hit it farther, right? Which that just comes by hitting it more in the center rather than increasing speeds and stuff. But yeah, I would say that's the 2 things people come in and say the most. I think it's really fun, to Doug's point there, when someone comes in and says, hey, why am I topping it? And then you can give them that cause and effect and get that ball rolling. But those are the 2 things you hear the most.
Kyle, how about you?
And I can add to that, with the students, I think they have to have an understanding. We live in a day and age now where people expect instant results or instant gratification.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's something that I try to help them understand. It's not going to happen overnight. You're typically going to struggle a little bit and maybe get a little bit worse before you start seeing some improvements. But just understanding that, you got to put the time in, you got to practice, and it's something that just doesn't happen with one lesson overnight.
It's a process.
100%. Consistency. Everybody that calls or reaches out says, I want to be more consistent. I want to be more consistent with my swing and more consistent in my game. I think, and usually I tell them, consistency comes from you, not we can show you the right direction, but consistency is going to come with your own practice and your own repetition. Literally, if you're practicing your own swing or whatever it is, you're going to be more consistent than anything I can show you for consistency.
I mean, my magic phrase too when we started working on my swing was what? I want to be more consistent.
Exactly.
I mean, that was exactly what we started out with. I want to be more consistent.
Right.
Well, I think it's like you're saying, though, it's dumping in that time. Here's what you got to do.
Yes.
I mean, all of us have been there, and the next week the student comes back.
Yep.
You get out and work on some things.
Nah.
Man, life got in the way.
Yeah.
I hadn't had time to do anything, but I'm ready for the
Right.
next lesson. And
Yep.
it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
Tough to be consistent if you're
Yep.
not putting in the time.
Yeah.
That's a truth. It's amazing what you can lose when you're in the middle of instruction when you're not practicing it.
I mean, it's understandable, right? Not
Sure.
being able to get out and practice, but you just got to expect that the process is going to go slower as you go through.
And what I try to do with my students as well is give them a little something to work at home, stuff, drills that they can do without actually hitting golf balls in their living room, just things to, again, repetition, get into a normal habit for them where they don't have to think about it as much.
So, in each of your opinions, what is the number one factor in solid ball striking?
Loaded question.
I know.
Number one, I think, is low point for me, which is basically impact. Impact with irons, they have to be somewhat of a downward strike. I tell everybody, if you want to actually practice, whether you're a beginner or high handicapper, without ever hitting a ball, just practice using a 7-iron or something and literally just being able to brush the grass or the mat or a carpet or whatever it is. If you can brush the grass and rotate your body in a somewhat consistent way, I try to tell people, you do not make a decent golf swing without the club hitting the ground. Everybody wants to try to pick the ball out of the ground without actually hitting the ground. And actually a good golf swing is made and it's compressed into the ground. So if you can practice in general just being able to strike the grass or a mat or whatever it is in a somewhat consistent spot at the bottom where the ball would be, that's going to get you a long way instantly, in my opinion.
No doubt. I mean, in order to hit that ball solid, you want those hands forward, right? And I think the hands and wrists are so important. You could put a real good player on one foot, and you know they're going to find the center of the face because they have such good feel in their hands and create the right dynamics as far as with their wrists and whatnot.
And one thing I see with a lot of amateurs or people just starting out or looking for instruction is they want the distance. They want to hit the ball far. They want to hit it farther than their buddies. You know, in doing that, I see a lot of long golf swings. You know, over exaggerated, very taking the club far back. You know, I related.
You haven't seen my swing; it's about to run.
But you see guys like that on tour. You know, John Rahm, Tony Finau, guys with very short swings. You know, I relate it to other sports. I try to do a lot of my lessons with other sports that people might have grown up playing. But, you know, a guy with a big backswing like John Daly, it's going to be a lot harder to get that club back into the center of the club face on the ball than someone with a shorter swing like John Rahm. Is more, you can duplicate it easier. It's a lot easier to repeat. And that's kind of one of the first things I start out with is lessons is shorten the swing, try to, you know, do some half shots, three-quarter shots and find the center of the face.
Make contact first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the downward swing. I am a big proponent on fundamentals. I think you got to have a great grip. You've got to be able to control the club face with your hands. I think a lot of people get so wrapped up into am I over the top, am I underneath? But at the end of the day, if you can square the club face and have a downward motion, you can have a lot of success. So spend a lot of time focused on that.
I mean, I know in my time playing golf with friends, whoever, I got to get under the ball. I got to get under the ball. That they're not thinking of that, you know, that angle
That
of
out of your
attack.
vocabulary.
Yeah, angle of attack and getting that, you know, that ball compression. You want distance, start compressing the ball, right? And that's going to get you distance.
Yeah, I think your brain says ball's got to get up in the air. You got to lean and lift it up, and
Flip
it's
it.
opposite of what our brains think.
Turn that 7-iron into a 9-iron.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pretty obvious is that angle of attack and making solid contact, compress the ball. It's going to go. So what do you guys, as a group, what do you think is a student's biggest misconception of their own swing and golf game?
I was just going to say, I get a lot of students. I think there's one swing, like there's only one way to swing a golf club. And I think one thing after years of working with a lot of veterans and, you know, disabled vets, I've got amputees. You got to learn to swing a lot of different ways. You can have a lot of success. The golf swing's a circle, but you know what? You can get it done a lot of different ways once you understand it. So for me, that's one of the biggest things. That I'm watching every YouTube video, and I got to be right here. But I'm like, if your body doesn't turn that way, it's not going to happen.
I think misconception-wise, I won't even get into down this road of people thinking they hit it farther than they do. I'm not even going to start, but I'm just going to say what they think they're doing, they're not really ever doing in a swing plane or position in general, because they think that their club face might be here, their path might be here, but that's why the cameras are so valuable in positions. They're just data we can use like to show them that's not actually what you're doing. We change a feel, they think they're doing something, and then they're not doing that. And that's why, like we always say, exaggeration to the utmost degree. If you exaggerate it, you get the tiniest little swing position change, and they don't realize that until you can show them whether it's a data point on a monitor or just a camera position on a phone or an app, which is crazy.
And nowadays, everybody has a cell phone you can practice with, and that's one of the most important things I let students know is, you know, when you're out practicing by yourself, put your camera up, record yourself, see what you're actually doing. You know, you might feel it looks or you're doing something one way and it's the complete opposite. So when you can see it on video, you know, it
yeah.
sometimes hammers the point.
Very valuable.
I mean, you've all dealt with it, right? You know, like let's say you get someone's posture, they get them a little tilted, you get them a little tilted back on the drive, like this feels ridiculous, right? You put it on video, it looks normal.
Yeah.
Or if someone has a real long swing, like you were saying, you tell them to take a half swing, that thing's still going all the way up there, right?
Parallel still.
That's about that much shorter.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
What do you mean?
They're like, no way. I took that to here. And I'm like, look at you, you're all the way up, right? That's your half
Great
swing.
point. It is. It is.
And so that feel versus real is I think a huge misconception.
All that half swings a year. I love how you said that because you give them the half swing and then they say, "That's the last one I just did." Yeah, that's not. That's the one
Right.
before that. No, that's the last one. That's
Right.
your half swing.
You know, just echoing I think most amateur golfers or people who are getting the lessons might be looking for help. You know, they think better golfers or good golfers don't hit bad shots.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. A lot of times it's how you rebound or your next shot, not compounding.
Yeah, their short game's a lot better.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Go watch the guys not making the cut on tour. They're hitting plenty of bad shots, right?
Yeah.
You know, not the ones that are on TV going on that week,
Yeah.
making cut, competing.
And
But-
TV doesn't show a lot of the bad shots
No, they won't.
because they don't want to embarrass them. So
I was
they're
gonna
not
say,
showing
it's-
bad shots.
It's like a highlight reel all day long. Forget the other 144 people that are out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean-
yeah. The best. They always show the best shots, right?
Yeah.
The guys sticking it on a
Who's got
green,
it going on?
massive drives, and yeah, you don't see it. I laugh about the camera when you were mentioning about videoing yourself. How many times have I FaceTime you on a golf cart? I have it poked, the camera behind me on a stick, sitting there. Man, look at this crap show I got going on. What the hell am I doing? And I got him on FaceTime, So I completely get it.
And I chime in with my number one swing advice, which is
Take 2 weeks off and quit.
That's right.
So this is something that actually Keith and I have talked about a little bit a couple of times. When it comes down to instruction, what is the difference, do you think, if you guys are dealing with someone with a low handicap, what kind of instruction do you give for a low handicapper, and then comparative to somebody that's a high handicapper?
I mean, I would say I relate it to more maybe like you said, a new golfer rather than.
Yep.
So I mean, a low handicap. Let's say they got a strong grip and they get a little bit of a shut face up top, but they've made it work and they're a good player. I don't feel as an instructor you need to change that unless obviously there's some real big issues. But for the most part, let's say they can figure that out, right?
Yep.
Whereas a low handy or a high handicapper newbie comes in with a real strong grip and a dead shut face. I'm going to switch that,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
But, I mean, who's to say, like Dustin Johnson? I mean, he's got a strong grip, but he obviously plays at a very high level. So
Yep.
if you've been able to get it done, there's certain things, right? Maybe you back it down for a low handicapper, but you're not going to throw them right to weak, and then they're not going to be able to find their ball for
Yep.
a long time. And there's no telling that'll make them better in the long run.
I think on the a beginner or novice golfer, the fundamentals, a routine for setup.
Yeah.
Yep.
On the more experienced player, a lot of times, just maybe course management, some strategies as far as hitting different shots.
Yep.
As a beginner, you just want to hit it straight. The better players, there's advantages to hitting certain shots and doing some of that type of work. Plus, I think short game. Better players understand short game is where it's at because you're not always on your game. You're not going to hit every green, and if you get up and down, a 4 is a 4, and doesn't matter how the scorecard doesn't lie.
Yep.
So.
And I think a lot of it depends on what the student is looking to get out of it too. If they want a quick fix, one lesson, and go out play with their buddies and just hit the ball better, or if it's they're in it for the long haul. If they're planning on doing it over the course of a year or two and actually really trying to improve and completely change things. So, I kind of see what they want at the beginning of the lesson. If it's something they're going to come back a couple times to see me, or just one and done type thing. But I always try to leave the students understanding what they're trying to work on.
Sure.
At least they have a good understanding of the drills we did, what they're looking to do, what they might be doing wrong, and how to fix it.
yeah.
Usually you can tell, like, when someone's going to be into the process, right? Rather
Yeah,
than just
they
looking
want to understand it.
Yeah, rather than looking for that magic bullet, that's kind of
Yeah, for me, I think a high handicapper or newbie is literally their body is going to be, it's always working in a different way than a good player is. And I'm always looking for outliers, or they have like some kind of big lift up or some type of spinal change, or they have a big sway going on with their body, or their hands or their arms doing weird flat or high. But when it comes to the better player, it's what's the club's doing. What's the club face doing? What's the path doing? It's always going to be, in my opinion, the high handicapper weekend warrior is going to be what's their body doing, and then the better players, what's their club doing for me. And then usually sometimes we have the privilege to have data. Like I'll go and see Austin and be like, hey, Austin, can I borrow a flight scope for this Thursday? Got a lesson with a really good player. Yeah, no problem. I'll be able to show him that data, and it's like, that's factual then. And it just becomes so much easier for when I tell him something that there's like, oh, yep, that's the data's there to support it. So I think that's the biggest one for me.
Yeah, I think a good player too can be in to out in, but repetitive.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and it's the repetition. Like I said, there's a lot of great players that hit draws. There's a lot of great players that hit fades. They just do it all the time.
Right.
Where a beginner, like you said, one swing to the next is like, I don't know what I'm getting.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
Well, yeah, consistency.
Right?
I mean, the comment to me is,
Consistency.
and when I meant consistency for me too, wasn't like consistently hitting the ball in a spot. I wanted consistency in my swing.
Right.
Because if you don't have it, you can't even make quick adjustments on a golf course to fix something.
Can't change anything.
No, because you have no idea what it really was. If you can't get a plane or a path, it's like
Right.
you don't. And that's what he's worked on with me is like, hey man, we got your body right now. Now we're getting your path into a spot. We're getting all these things put together, and we've been 18 months,
grinding, baby,
18
grinding.
months now. Probably.
Yeah, it's tough to fix something, right? When somebody's like,
Oh.
I hit it left, I hit it right.
Yeah, right.
When you don't have a pattern, it's tough
No.
to fix
Yeah,
something.
7 different ball flights and 6
Yeah.
different swings.
Yeah. Well, like you said, you can make an adjustment if you understand that consistency. If you get that part where you grind it out and you get to that feel that, hey, maybe I'm not hitting it quite right, or I'm hitting it a little bit more of a fade than normal today. Well, I can know with my path, I can strengthen my grip a little bit and fix it on a golf course, right? I can do that. So I completely understand when a high handicapper comes in and said, I want consistency. Well, you can't have it until you get a swing. You got to get something
Some direction.
consistent there.
Yeah.
Give you direction, and then it's on them to actually take that direction and go.
What do you mean? You just go buy new clubs and buy all new clothes and new shoes, and it'll fix everything.
I think one thing with consistency is when people go out to practice, they need to practice with a purpose. When they go to the range, hit balls, focus on something instead of just pounding golf balls.
Yeah.
At the Sims, I see guys come in all the time to play. First thing they do is pull driver out of the bag. Head driver. Work on your wedges, work on your irons. Do something that you can focus on and get better at when you're practicing.
We talked too about like golf balls. You go out there with a large bucket of golf balls and you smoke through them in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You've got nothing. There's no purpose to that, right? Yeah, that's it. You got a little cardio workout in, and that's about it because you didn't really learn anything that day.
Yeah, you've got to have those measurables, right? Because just hitting balls, like you can swing poorly and hit a good shot every now and then. It's, hitting down on it, measuring. I got to hit down on it to get the ball. It's something that you can measure and quantify.
Not overreacting to a bad one too, right? I mean, work through the bad ones. If you feel you're doing the right motion and everything, keep working through it and start finding that ball doing that.
And just know some days you're gonna have to grind it out.
Sure.
I mean, you just aren't gonna have it that day. I have a lot of those. So I've seen you two play. I know there ain't a whole lot.
Some levels are just a little different.
Yeah, true. So kind of going off of that, we talked a little bit about, what you would do from a low to a high handicapper. I mean, what are some of your most used drills? Let's do it for a low handicapper and a high handicapper.
I mean, like I'm big on posture, right? I think a lot of people that come out of that posture, whether it's on the backswing, the through swing, that early extension and stuff. So I've got like they're actually advertisement boxes, and I put them right behind their butt, and I say I want you to push that box back, or maintain contact as you go through. And I use that one quite a bit, as far as just getting people to stay in posture and not because when we're lifting and doing all these different things, talk about consistency. We're not hitting the same spot every time.
Earlier, when you were talking about the low point, a lot of times I'll get the marking paint. We all know,
Chalk.
they love it out there, right? When I'm marking, but can you measure? Can you hit the ground in front of that chalk line, the target side?
Yep.
I like 7 out of 10 times. It's a C. It's 70. It's barely passing.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
No.
So, but it's measurable, and we're not hitting a golf ball. We're just doing that, and then it translates into, all right, now I'm hitting down on it. So that simple impact bag, things like that to give you that forward-leaning shaft feeling.
I like to, a lot of the beginners come in over the top. That's 90% of the lessons you deal with, guys swinging over the top and having a little bit of a cut or a slice. I like to have them get close to a wall or a flat area, kind of get their butt or back up against it a couple inches away, turn the club upside down and get the grip, or even use an alignment stick and get it behind you on the wall.
Yeah, we've done. Deanno and I've done that.
A lot of that.
Drag that down the wall.
Yes.
All these students, their first movement's off the wall. You see them come off the wall, so that's a very good visual. You can feel it. You can do it at home. Again, repetition you can do without actually hitting the golf ball.
My main one is literally even better players or higher handicaps, go to the top and stop. I have everybody stop at the top so I can put them in a position with their wrists and their club face, different, it'd be pretty good playing with their arms or whatever. And then from there, just pull them down nice and slow, either that or just swinging nice and slow from like 9 to 3. If you can't do it from 9 to 3, nice and slow, I tell them hit an 8-iron 50 yards and try to make the motion. And then they're banging at 140. I was like, they can't slow. If you can't do it slow and shorter, you're never going to be able to do it long and full speed.
I always like it when you're at the top and you're like, all right, go, and then they kind of kickstart it.
Oh yeah,
Exactly. It's a momentum. We all want momentum in our swing.
Yeah,
You
I
can't do
jumpstart
it.
a
You
weird
can't cheat
motion.
it from there.
Yeah, just drop it.
I want to generate all that speed and power way back here. It's like
Like Kyle said, I like that view. We do that all the time. I do it at your place too. Literally, so if you take an alignment stick or whatever, drag it against the screen or whatever it might be. But the first way they usually try to do it is they'll early extend to do it. I was like, no, stay in your posture, and you have to do it with your arm and your extra rotation and do it that way. It's so much different.
That's amazing. A lot of students, and I think, I'm sure you've seen this. We'll draw a box on their hands and say, hey, a good player goes vertical for the first foot, and everybo's this way, right? You can't.
Yep.
And I'm like, just go down. Like, that can't be right. I'm like, yeah, now
Right.
turn.
Yeah.
Now you're down there trying to
Right.
use your big muscle.
the fight of
Neil
my
and I are
life.
doing, so
tough to
where's the
change.
grinding?
Yeah.
We had him out
We
there.
can send you a picture of me a few years ago when we were out. Oh,
Well, so our next video we're gonna do, we just had him a cup of water, taking water behind him instead of dumping it this way, dumping it that way.
Yeah.
So
you
this,
go.
yep, this is our video. Stay
Well,
tuned.
it's funny. Like, you get
Yeah.
out here and then you start doing weird things with your
Yeah.
hands. And
Yep.
oh, yeah. I have a spot in my basement. You're talking about the alignment stick. I have an arc on my wall where when we started, I would just go downstairs and that's all I would do is rub that thing. I got an arc on the drywall in this spot in my basement. That was,
going.
I do. I just kept arcing that thing. I'm like, don't take it away from that wall. And for
Right.
me, hardest thing in the world, because my first move was always
Yep.
that way. Always. It was horrific, but
drywall training aid.
I'm telling you, man,
Game.
my wife yells at me to this day about that damn thing.
You're like, I'll repaint it.
Don't worry, I can fix that.
Yeah.
So here's kind of something that we have discussed multiple times. Again, is how has instructing changed with all of the new technology?
Two things that I see a lot of are a ton of students recording their swing, right? They show up, here's what I'm doing. But then they also are out there looking at a zillion different ways to fix it, but they still don't know, like, how do I change? And I can't help but think, a lot of times I'm prescribing, 20 minutes of drill, but you got to do it 5-6 days a week, right? Yep. You don't go to the gym one day a week and get healthy. You got to go out. And to do that, that's how you'll change. But the technology, and I don't know what all the stats are. I'm sure nobody's getting any better. The average score is probably pretty similar, even with the ball going further and bigger sweet spots.
It's like a quarter stroke better in the last 40 years.
Exactly. You still got to put in the work. You got to understand it. But for me, it's been people showing up with their phone. Here's what I got. They think they know what they need to fix, and then going from there.
I think it kind of helps instructors, sending videos, being able to record them, doing voiceovers, sending them videos, just to refer back to when they get home, when they go out on the range the next time, they can look back at the drills, at what they're supposed to work on. That makes it easier as an instructor. What the student does with it when they get that information, that's up to them if they're going to put the work into practice. But at least you're giving them. I feel better, sending the videos with them, knowing that they can relate back to them later, down the road.
Big fan of the video stuff. I think that's great. I do think some of this stuff, though, it's turning people into almost numbered, just hogs and robotic type of motions, and they're losing what real good players do better than most is they have feel, right? They can see 170 yards or see a target and hit the target, right?
Yep.
And I think when people just hit nothing but on TrackMan and they're worried about nothing but numbers, I do feel we lose that element of again, what we're trying to do, and that's just accomplish a goal, and that's hit a target.
Yeah.
I think the biggest change, obviously, when we're privileged enough to have a monitor, I think with numbers and data, but you're right, all you guys, the phone itself in general. I remember back in pro golf discount days for myself working on my own golf swing, the old $high digital camera, tripod, recording a swing, going home, Firewire, you name it. This big old operation that took 45 minutes just to load a swing in. Now it's phone, bam. All the apps, there's so many different apps out there and cloud-based systems. It's just
And
ridiculous.
that stuff is great.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
It's
It just
really-
makes it so easy. And the phones now are, I mean, frame by frame with the club face. It's just ridiculous. And I always kid around that back when I was really cutting teeth in my game, trying to get better. If YouTube would have been such a popular thing back then, I would have been in trouble. I would have been in
Studying
trouble.
everything,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It would have been bad news.
Well, I'm actually glad you kind of mentioned that, because that's kind of the next part of this question is, we just talked a little bit about technology and all this stuff. What about all this stuff online, the instructional stuff? I can fix my slice in 10 swings. I open every single one of them. I mean, as a big slicer, when you start, when you
Downloading
open
those
it?
viruses.
I mean, seriously, you go on.
That's what he calls it.
Yeah. Yeah. Viruses. Yeah. So, I mean, we have all this instruction now that's online that can fix anything in 10 swings. How has that changed for you when you have people come in and talk to you about instruction?
The golf swing is something, I mean, there's not one right way, right? You know, talk about results and how you do it. It's at the end of the day, the number on the scorecard. And you could have a very knowledgeable instructor trying to teach something one way. You might have the instructor down the road trying to teach the same thing, but just in a different way. You know, the verbiage of how they say it, you know, and I think a lot of the online videos now are great because you might be trying to fix one thing, but you can look at it 10 or 20 different ways. You know, you might understand it better from one instructor versus the other. So it gives, you know, students options to kind of scroll and look what, you know, maybe they find somebody that they click with or that they like. And same thing in-person instruction, that sometimes you just hit it off and, you know, makes a lot of sense with that student or instructor.
I was gonna say, a lot of times I'll talk to people and like, oh, they scored really good. Like, what'd you do different? Well, they don't even know.
Sure.
Well, I think it's still, to me, it's muscle memory. Over time, if you want to make a change, if you're over the top, seeing it, no, I think I know what I got to do. That's great, but until you can feel it, right? Until you can do enough drills and feel like, oh, I felt that. And we've all had better students that say that because they know where their body's at a little more. But I think it's that repetition, how your body learns, you know, shorter increments, extended period of time. I'm a big believer in, you know, not banging balls for 3 hours, but, you know, let's do 45 minutes of doing something productive, but do it 5 days a week. And, but then, like I said, what are you measuring? Just because you're getting down here doesn't mean the next day on the course you shoot your best round.
No.
But it's building, you know,
process.
towards building on that process and building on towards the long-term goal.
Actually, I think when you're doing the changes, it gets worse for a while.
Oh, it
I mean, it's
definitely
horrible.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, we made all these changes, completely changed my swing. And I said, I'm scoring like 10, 12 strokes worse every round right now. It's horrible.
You're just
I mean,
counting wrong.
Yeah. I was like, I'm worse than I ever was. And then all of a sudden it's like you get into it and you're going, holy cow, now I'm starting to hit that consistency with my shot. So
I think that's a lot of that's on the instructor to create that encouragement, to let them know it's a process, and to tell them to stick with it, and to you know, encourage them along that way rather than let it hit the panic button. But I mean, as far as the YouTube stuff, I think it's all good information. It's just, does it pertain to that person? You know, if someone, you know, talk about someone who doesn't understand their swing well, let's say, oh, you got to drop it here, but let's say they already drop it way under there. Like those kind of things I think don't apply well. But certainly if someone knows what they're doing wrong, I think it's a great tool because you can get it a lot of different ways. But most people don't know what they're doing wrong, and that's the problem.
yeah, I still think I like the live person there with me, like to be able to examine. I like using all the tools, especially when I started, because he's telling me one thing, I'm telling him it doesn't feel like that. And he shows you the numbers, and you're going, okay, so I'm lying to myself. I really am not doing what he's trying to tell me. So to me, I mean, I like the YouTube stuff. I do. I love looking at it and watching it. But I like the fact that I have somebody there and we look at video together and we're breaking stuff down. And it's like, to me, that was very important to helping me. And the feel that this is, like I told him this year, I really have a feel now. I can tell when I'm not there. Like, so before, even when we started, I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of have it, but it didn't really feel it.
I was just going to say the same thing. Just like if they can show up, you know, whether it's information off of YouTube or wherever, they know they're steep. They know they're coming over the top. I know I need to come underneath and come from the inside to actually hit it better and not hit that slice. Well, they come with that steep pitch shaft, and they're like, oh, I'm going to get underneath. And they move it about 3 inches. And when I can record them to say, no, and give them an exaggerated feel, like you need to think that thing's coming way down here, and they think it's coming down there, and then they move it another 2 inches. That's the kind of the biggest thing, is just being able to, I keep saying it, exaggeration piece of it, knowing that what they're trying to do and showing them that they're not actually doing that. That's the biggest deal.
Yeah.
I mean, they're working towards it, but they think they're going to get it in an hour. Nope, it's not going to come in an hour or a week or a month. Probably it might take 6 months.
Yeah. I think the thing
6
that
months only. That's
yeah,
pretty good.
great.
That's really all right.
You got a pretty gifted student.
Yeah, hell.
Exactly.
I think one of the things too is when we talk about YouTube videos is distance, right? The misconception again is I can give you 10 yards in 10 swings.
yeah.
That to me was always one you kind of shake your head and going, that's a recipe for destruction.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Some of those actually, some of those guys that it came from, like Hank Haney, fix your slice in 10 swings. That surprised me for a guy like that to
Yeah.
be advertising that. That is a bold claim, you know.
Yeah.
No, they can make them not slice it for a swing, but
Yeah.
fixing it's different.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yup.
There's the difference.
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of instruction videos. You can find thousands and thousands of ways to swing. I guess to me, it would be find the one that works for you, right?
You try to give a
Swing or swing.
75-year-old guy, get him turning and getting in the gear, and that's just not going to happen.
Create more club heads.
Right, exactly.
Start firing that one hip.
Yeah.
That's something you got to talk to students about too, or
Right.
realistic expectations. I had a lesson. It's been probably 5 years ago or so. A gentleman was 90 years old, and he was hitting his 7-iron over 100 yards, and he wanted to gain club head speed, hit it farther. Somebody like that, being is 90 years old, and hitting a 7-iron over 100 yards.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. They have to have realistic expectations when they come into a lesson. For
sure.
Yeah.
You schedule your lessons really close together.
So we kind of started touching on this a little bit. What's your biggest message to, when you're giving instruction to your students?
I mean, I think like one of the number one things that people do is they're just too tense in their golf swings. They carry too much tension. They change their pressures. They, get up here and then change their pressures. And, they're so tight in the forearms. And I really try to get people to loosen up, relieve the tension, let this club swing. And that's majority of what I'm trying to get people to do. Relieve that.
Yeah. I would say in the last handful of years, as I've transitioned to a lot more kind of that beginner novice student after really being focused on the better players, just routine. Have a routine for everything you do. If you can get set up to the ball and look like a tour player, we've got a good chance of hitting the ball. And if you can't get set up there, because the golf swing takes 2 seconds. Whatever your body's set up, it's on a path for success or failure real quick. So getting them to realize, because they all want to jump into the swing, and it's like, we're not quite there yet. So let's just work on that setup. So for me, it's harping on a routine from how you grip the club to how you walk in for your posture and balance and all those types of things, just so when you're ready to go, then we can work on, don't squeeze too hard at the top. Right. Don't change that grip pressure
or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. But
we've already touched on it a little bit, but just the understanding of it's not going to happen overnight. I relate it a lot to learning an instrument. If I went to learn how to play guitar or take a guitar lesson, I'm not going to the next morning wake up and all of a sudden be able to play a song. Like it's, give you drills, give you stuff to work on. And eventually, hopefully, you get to that point where, you can play the guitar awesome, but it's not going to happen the next day. And that's kind of the biggest thing I try to talk to the students when they come in is just, you got to, how committed are you? And you got to put the time in on your own to get better.
Yeah, mine's kind of two-part. I mean, obviously for the beginners and, the weekend style warriors, it's GASP, right? GASP, grip, alignment, stance, posture. That's always going to be, the meat and the potatoes of it. But a little bit more accomplished players, somebody who's been playing a little more often, I always kind of kid around like, you're going to come see me for an hour. You're going to leave here swinging worse than when you showed up because we've changed something. We have changed something. The reason that you're here, we changed this. And that being said, it's like, so whatever feels comfortable to you, it's not different. We got to make it feel uncomfortable. That's what I keep saying these words, exaggeration. We got to make it feel uncomfortable to where that's the only way you're going to get it as soon as you can. You're not going to get it in an hour. You're not going to get it in a day or a week. We've used the term like going to the gym. No different than going with a gym session for an hour. 2 weeks later, that same person comes to the gym. Hey, how's the gym been going the last 2 weeks? Oh, I haven't been able to get in there. Well, what are you doing here now? Then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's the biggest. It's just the expectation of they want to get better or whatever it is in an hour or a week. It's just not going to happen.
I think back to years ago when we had Golf World and we had this money back guarantee. I think we talked about this last time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll give all your money back for these lessons, but you got to come in and practice. And we had one student out of hundreds that actually came in and continued to practice. And I'm like, you control your own destiny. I'm giving you an education, but it's up to you to do the work. And I think students, they got to realize that they're not buying a golf game when they take a golf lesson. They're buying some education. They got to work at it.
We did talk about the last time we had you on, because I was one of them students too, in Saginaw State Street. Remember? I remember like had this, and Doug was ahead of his time at the time, because we were at camera and taking golf swings, and he had to dry erase marker on the TV. And doing oh yeah, it was awesome, man. It was like
Austin was born.
Right?
right.
Seriously. I might not have even been a thought at that point.
Right.
Probably not.
It was cool. I mean, but nobody else was doing anything like that camera wise. I mean, it was cool.
Yeah, we had a couple of hitting bays inside of just the nets, and then
it was awesome.
But yeah, people would come in. We block off practice time, and people would schedule time to practice. Nobody show. They show up for the lesson,
man,
but they wouldn't show up for that extra practice. And then, how are things going? Well, work got in the way. The kids, you name it. And so I think they all learned that it's you get out of it what you put into it.
Sure. Yeah,
It's funny.
playing golf's definitely different than practicing. That's for sure.
It's the same. I'll tell people, like somebody who comes over top, steep shaft. Okay, we know you got to get underneath. You got to pitch it down, come underneath, swing out right. But I was like, you can get it in here in the range. You can get comfortable with it a little bit. Show up tomorrow on the golf course on the first tee, and there's water right.
Yeah.
Or you think you're going to go underneath and swing towards the water? You're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
You're going to get away and slice it in there instead.
But hopefully that comfort, right, is somewhere
Yeah.
in between where you started and
Right.
where you are during your sessions, right? And that's where you want to get it to be at.
And that's where you get better as a player, is on the range, hitting balls, and not on the course. So when I have people go out on the course, I try to tell them, all your swing thoughts should be done on the driving range. You shouldn't be out playing, worrying about the lesson you just did. So, it's important to put the time in. When you get done with your lesson, work on things and not just go right out on the course and play a quick 9 holes.
Yeah, I think that learned behavior aspect of I'm always working on something, but when you get on the course, just to be target oriented and not think of, am I breathing right? Am I doing this? You just got to look at the target and react to that, and it's a learned behavior, especially for those students that are so hardcore on working on their swing, and they got a beautiful swing, and they get on the course and they just can't pull it together, and you just got to be target oriented out there.
Scoring's so different than a golf swing, right? There's a lot of bad golf swings that can score.
You're not kidding.
And there's a lot of good golf swings that don't.
Yeah. Oh, I still think you're correct. Your short game, you got to work on that. I mean, you can go out there and drive the ball a mile. There's a lot of things you can do. If you have a bad short game, it's not going to end up well on a scorecard.
Yeah.
Just won't
No
look
doubt.
good.
I mean, I can sit on the range. There's a couple of people that come to mind and hit balls next to somebody who might be a 10 handicap. And I'm looking, I was like, man, he's hitting the ball better than I am. But he go out there and just getting it around, being able to score. Short game, being able to, get out from this trouble or not getting it. It's like it's a huge factor when it comes to scoring. Obviously, just getting it around and getting it in the hole.
High handicappers, we get mad and we quit. I mean, it is. You get pissed. So you're like, hell with this. Instead of thinking, okay, you made a bad swing, go next time and make a better swing. Put yourself in a position to be able to get up and down. Turn a double into a single, right? Don't give up on that hole because you had a bad swing. That's tough because, again, instant gratification. I want to see a better swing. Yeah.
Earlier we talked about the difference between a low and a high handicap. A low handicapper can forget what just happened.
Sure.
A high handicapper just can't.
Oh, no.
You're just done.
Right.
Oh, no.
Right.
We've all seen the videos. The pubs flying, smashing them on the ground, snapping them in half.
And again, going back to the high handicappers, I think a lot of them don't realize the mental aspect of the game. That's very, very important of not compounding bad shots or turning that bogey into a double or triple. And, not trying to play the hero and hit a miraculous shot out of the woods to get it on the green instead of just punching out. And,
Sure.
So we see that a lot too out on the course and high handicap players.
What do you mean? High handicappers can hit between two trees as wide as that TV screen 100 yards out? Sure, we can do it.
90% air or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And exactly like you said, punch it out and give yourself a good neck shot. Pick a target, right?
Yeah.
What is that distance you can get to that you're comfortable hitting that next shot?
Yeah. I mean, and you're just adding up numbers, right?
Oh.
And whether that 5 falls on a par 3 or a par 4, whatever it is, I mean, it's just a 5 that you're hitting up, and get people to understand that rather than obsessing over I got to hit this on the green to make a par. It's like you don't always need to do that.
We had kind of a funny story. I don't know if we talked about this one last time with our junior league at a state tournament a few years ago. We had a couple kids and we're coming down. There's 2 holes to go and we're right there. And I'm giving some coaching on the tee box. I'm like, you just got to hit it like 160 yards. I'm hitting my driver really good. I'm like, yeah, you got a pond that comes into play out of bounds. It's about 2 feet wide. And, and these are young kids, right? They're like 12. I'm hitting it good. And I'm like, well, if it was me, I would hit it here because you can make a par from the fairway. But at the end, you choose your own, So both of them hit driver OB, and they're just losing their mind. Their dad comes up after, what'd you say? What'd you say to my kid? And this and that. And I can't believe. I said, they got to live with it. I said, you know what's going to happen? They're never going to hit a driver again, because that's how you learn.
That's a teaching moment.
You got it. And I said, that's how you learn, because when you're young, you haven't been burned enough at this game to realize that.
I love that.
Yeah, and he sat there and goes, all right. I just would have taken it right out of his hand. I'm like, no.
He's got to learn.
Yeah.
So
He said his piece. You said your piece.
Yeah.
He makes the decision.
Hey, man, you guys have seen high handicappers. They always hit with a driver. It doesn't matter what the hole is.
Yeah.
They're going to hit that driver.
Oh yeah.
It's like he's the one who constantly is like, think about the shot. It's like, yeah, I don't need it here. That's self-destruction. But they all want to hit it a long ways, right? Bomb that thing down there.
Oh, yeah.
So to kind of wrap things up, we always love to talk to people about, you guys are instructors, about some funny stories. There's always some. Do you guys have any that you can talk about? Obviously, no names. We don't have to talk about people unless it's somebody you really want to get at.
Yeah.
But some good stories of instruction, because, I'm sure you've seen a lot.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many smaller, non-monumental funny moments as an instructor that you go through that, wouldn't get a chuckle out of a big group, but you just, think they're funny. But I don't know, I was with a student one time at the back of Curry's range, and gosh, just a handle dragger, just right, trying to get him to release the club. And we finally get him to release this club, and this club goes soaring out of his hands up into that huge tree left on the back of Curry.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, crap, and I climb up this tree, probably about good 15, 20 feet, get back down, next swing, right back up.
No,
Back up there.
Same tree. Yep, and it was
I hope
higher
he
up.
climbed up or she climbed up.
No, I went and I said, we're leaving that there. Got a ladder the next day and got it in the morning.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, boy.
And I'll say the name because I have no shame. It was Carson Everett.
Oh, Carson. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I had a student a couple of years ago out on the driving range at the Nightmare Golf Course that I was teaching, and was with a lesson, and I knew my second one was coming out shortly after, and I turned behind me and I see a gentleman walking out of the clubhouse with about 5 or 6 dozen golf balls, carrying them in his arms. Well, he walked all the way out to the range. Very new golfer, very new to the game. He thought he had to buy his own range balls that he purchased off the rack in the pro shop to bring to hit out on the driving range for his lesson.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. No
Hey,
way.
I had one very similar to the new golfers, since I have a lot of new golfers that I see. That a gentleman show up and he's got, before your time again, Austin, parachute pants on. And I make a comment to him. I said, you look like MC Hammer. And this guy, still to this day, and I'm like, we'll go out and hit, and we're laughing. Still to this day, when he calls and books a lesson, it's MC Hammer. It's MC Hammer here. I need to book a lesson. It's so funny, but still this day, he had no idea. He didn't know, similar to that, right? I don't know what I wear, where I should be.
Sure.
It was great.
Oh, that is funny.
I had one. So every short game lesson, so a lot of people buy 3-packs, and usually if a 3-pack, usually by the second lesson, I'm going over doing a short game at the par 3 at Curry. And all my short game lessons, I start out the same way. I give somebody no clubs. I give them 3 balls in their hand, 2 in one left hand if they're right-handed, 1 in the right, and we just stand about 10 or 15 feet off the green, and then I just want you to try to underhand toss it into the hole. First one. And the whole premise of this is just learning, to get a little bit better, a little whatever you're doing, and to learn your feel. So you're not really thinking of where you're releasing it, how far you're reaching back, anything like that. First one, didn't even sniff the green, over the green by 20 feet. I'm like, holy mackerel, we're only 30 feet away from the pin. Like, whoa, okay. Second one, over the green. They're 25 feet over the green. I'm like, we got some feel issues.
Yeah.
Third one, over the green.
Oh my God.
3 balls from 30 feet away couldn't
adjust.
keep one on the green. No.
Well, you should have moved back to 60.
Right? Yeah.
At that point, I'm like,
You would
this
look
is
like a hero.
this is gonna be a long 3-pack lesson. Is gonna be very oh boy.
Man.
Yeah, exactly. So we've all dealt with that kind of the feel and
Right.
issues, but it's like, wow, that was a bad one.
When he would teach, he had some students that he showed up to a lesson with, and he had a mitt and a ball, and all he did is play catch. Mm-hmm. And that was the golf lesson for 30 minutes, just trying to get the coordination, the feel of, using your hands and doing this stuff, because it was probably a person very similar to that, where I just had zero feel and zero, ability to do anything like that.
Well, we had your dad on for a podcast here. One of our first ones.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
We told the story. This is my story as a student. Your dad meets me out. We're at the country club right out. So literally, he shows up, and I got my bag out there. He drives up. He's got 2 bags. I've told you the story too. He's got his bag, and then he's got just a bag of junky clubs. And I was like, "What are we doing?" He's like, "We're throwing clubs today."
Yeah.
And I'm, I'm a handle dragger. I'd like to hang on to it with my left hand. He's like, "I just want you." Gives me like a 7-iron. He's like, "I just want you to throw it in front of you down this fairway." And I'm like, "All right." I think it's the stupidest thing in the world. I'm like, "Okay." So I get up there, set up to it, and I go to throw it. And for whatever reason, I hung on to it. Goes behind me, gets stuck in the tree. I can't. And I am laughing so hard, I'm crying, and he's laughing so hard. We laughed for 5 minutes. We just sit there. We couldn't even talk. We were just crying, laughing. We didn't get it down. It was up there for like 3 months.
Oh, that's
we just
so
laughed
funny.
about it. It took me about 4 or 5 clubs throwing to get it straight. I kept going from behind me. It would go over here to there, and it finally got it straight. For me to feel it straight, I felt like I was releasing it over here.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's probably typical for the other way. People release more that way.
Sure, they'll put it right in the
Yeah,
ground,
okay,
right? Yeah, they'll just. Yeah, I mean that's a great job.
It is.
I think like Austin said too, ADM model, like other sports, balance is balance. It doesn't matter if it's in golf and if you're throwing a football and coordination, like you can do other things.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, a lot of people may not become golfers, but if you're out there doing some of those things, it all carries back to what you're working on. So I think there's a lot of value in the baseball or throwing a football
Whatever
or a
it is.
frisbee, and
Especially young kids too. I mean,
yeah.
I deal with them.
Yeah.
Just getting them to be athletic and do different things and stuff like that.
That's one of the first questions I ask students when they come is, what other sports
Yeah.
have you played?
No matter
So
the
that
age,
you
honestly.
can try to relate it to something that they're familiar with. And
Mario Kart.
There you go.
Exactly. Right.
I mean, you got a
That's not a
long-time
sport.
baseball player. It's different.
Oh. Well, guys, I mean, what a great session. Great to sit down and talk with all of you. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks for having me.
Great.
We thank you guys for being here today. A lot of great information. Can't wait to get this out to our group. MFers, you can play bad, just play fast.